Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 14 of the anime series Shokugeki no Soma. And this one was actually pretty freaking kick-ass, I have to say. And I say that a lot about this series, but I mean, this episode really thoroughly pumped me up and got the juices and the adrenaline flowing watching, as Soma realizes that the plan he was putting into action for the purposes of this sort of, test that everyone is being gauged under, the buffet, the requirement of using eggs and everything like that, he really took a misstep with how he was going to approach that. And you had characters like Arina and this new character Alice just making fun of him to his face about his poor judgment. And he is really mulling that over as we open this episode, much as we left him at the end of the previous episode. And what this episode was for me was like, we're seeing the idea of how important to the task things like improvisation and adaptability can be in the restaurateur sort of, framework. Because a lot of different restaurants, I mean, there are all kinds of different restaurants, but each of them have their own requirement sets and, from fast food chains all the way up to the topmost tier of just elitist, culinary factions, if you will, and companies and food production facilities. And we see that, in various degrees, Totsuki is putting to the test all of these different people who have these aspirations to try to see if they have that adaptability or if they can plan ahead and everything like that. And that's really the two aspects of the whole game for the last two episodes, is people coming, up with their own sort of preparatory food and delivering on that, being able to put that forth 200 dishes worth, or in Arina's case over 400, in Alice's case over 380, something like that. And we're seeing a lot of these characters. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me, gobsmackingly so, the idea of having to produce the same dish over 200 times. Like, wow, I'm lucky if I can make one dish for myself in the microwave, So, I mean, that is gobsmacking to begin with. The idea that all of these kids, all of these, wannabe chefs and everything like that, they want to be able to, harness this idea. Are they capable, and that is to say Totsuki, are these kids capable of coming up with unique dishes, serving so many of them, and playing to the crowd, playing to the expectations of the customers, the consumers that are coming in who will want to be buying or tasting this food, grab them and reel them in kind of mentality. But also, in the case of Soma especially, it's the idea of, here he is, he's come in, and he had the wrong idea. He has fallen flat. He's got 30 minutes left, as this episode is unfolding. And suddenly, at the peak of his skill and adaptability and calling back, I thought this was a great reference, calling back on his father doing for him as a boy what he did for Megumi a couple episodes back now, slapping the hands, waking him back up into the real world, his mentality wrapping around that idea of step by step, plan it out, but do it as quickly as possible. And then he becomes frickin' superhuman. I mean, the allusions to Fist of the North Star in the previous episode came to fruition with the fact that his hands are moving in a blur. And it was just, I was seething with like adrenaline, like, hell yes, kick ass, And then, of course, you have characters like Arina, she's completely incredulous at this. Like, to her, this is defying her mental process. She's even at that point getting jabs in, like, you're never going to do it. What are you, nuts? You think you actually have the capability? And I love how Soma reels in that little girl who, the boys are pushing her away and everything. And it's like a great soliloquy. The idea of, in this particular instance, here are the two tough kids, and here's this cowering little girl. Well, then all of a sudden that girl is the sort of foothold to empowerment, and all of a sudden all the crowds are coming to Soma's thing because he's doing, as Alice so eloquently put it, a circus act to reel people in, get their attention, prepare the food in front of them, as Dojima is basically saying. And I was thinking this as Soma was doing it, but there is a sort of essence of, theatricality to food preparation in certain environments where you go to restaurants, they specify, have the food made right there in front of you, and you eat it within seconds of it being finished, and so that's mainly what he utilized in those moments, and it completely won the day. And I was like so excited by just how much they ramped up this episode, and his success. Like, he literally within 3 seconds he managed to accomplish what he set out to do, what he needed to do to move on. And as we find out from Dojima after this, like 300 some odd students have now been sent packing because they failed. They simply failed. Only like 600 or 680, something along those lines, now get to move on. And there's this hint toward the end of the episode that is very ominous and foreboding, straight from the mouth of Dojima himself. The autumn elections. Now we're talking about, at least the sort of, implication by his words are now we're going to have these students going up against each other, like Shokugeki's out the wazoo, probably between all of them. And that is tantalizing, but it's also like fearsome, because who's going to, make the cut and who isn't, all that kind of stuff. These are just really cool characters, the lot of them, really. Even like a character like Alice and her partner Rio, they are kind of meant to be antagonistic, but there's aspects to them that I find really compelling, especially to do with a bomb drop revelation. There's that one point where they show Arina and Alice back to back, and I'm like, they look strikingly similar, and I had a feeling there was something between them. I was saying as much in the previous episode discussion video that I put up. I was having a vibe about them, and it seemed like, Alice was consumed with a sort of obsessiveness, toward Arina. And she, even in this episode, she's like, after she completes the 200 dishes, or more so, as we found out, like 380, whatever it is, using all of her ingredients to make a multi-tiered egg dish, which sounded absolutely fascinating to me, especially the egg milkshake. But as she's walking out, she's like, maybe I should go check on Arina, And it's kind of like, what is with that? And then finally, we find out, well, it's kind of like the Patty Duke thing. It's cousins. They're cousins, back and forth. Here they are. They've been related the whole time. And they've had this adversarial thing. And I got to give the show creators kudos. I don't know if this was taken from the original source material or not, or just done this way for the anime. But the fact that Arina doesn't acknowledge this in the previous episode, when Alice is first on the scene, at least for the viewer's sake, was like genius, because I was wondering the whole time. And I like how there are allusions to the fact that the Rio character, when Alice is trying to get Rio as he walks up, to tell Soma about their back history and everything, and he's just kind of like, well, they're cousins, and then she interrupts him, she gets ticked off. But as they're going to leave, Soma looks at his arm, and he's got like, a sort of wristband that can be turned into a headband, much like Soma has. And I was thinking at one point, like just the way he's sort of zoned out. He's not really with it as everyone else is, much like Soma is. He doesn't give any F's, so there is a kind of similarity there. And it's going to be interesting because, of course, we see the PV for the next episode. And it seems to suggest that Arina and Soma, they're in a car, they're like a limo or whatever it is together. They're going to have to be sidled up. And I have to wonder if this is going to become kind of like an impromptu antagonistic duo to go against the Alice and Rio characters. Now, that's just my speculation, but that would be exciting as all hell. And probably it'd be a laugh riot. I'd be laughing my ass off. And so, there's also the aspect, looking at the PV, Daddy's home, it looks like Soma's father is coming back, and I like that we got the reference flashback in this episode, so you remember that character if you aren't following as closely as someone like me would tend to do. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that's who that is. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we move on from here, and I you know, am really excited to see. I mean, and I also have to say I love the like little interstitials. The dream sequences are funny as always. They were in this episode, but even more so like the half point of the episode and then at the tail end, the end card being all Street Fighter-esque. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And so I'm pumped. I'm stoked for the next episode. This episode was just all kinds of awesome. Seeing Soma, you know, just ripping into it and becoming, like I say, like the Flash or like Superman at full speed. I mean, this guy's going light speed with the egg dish production. And it's in, you know, sort of counter effect of messing up at the tail end of the previous. It was just all kinds of awesome. Seeing him come back, fighting and taking it down, you know, and then being, once again, oblivious. Like, you have Arena, like, is he sleeping? Like, what's going on? Is he aware of what's going on? When he's getting in that zone and he's preparing and figuring out in his head. Just freaking awesome. Goosebumps inducing was this episode. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of the episode. Episode 14 of Shokugeki no Soma. If you've seen it, if you were as pumped as I was and excited, you know, by the episode itself and excited for what's to come, or if it fell flat for you, anything goes in the comments below. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.